Martinsville attorney Reid Young has been fighting what he calls an injustice in his town for years. It started when a high school friend got caught with marijuana.
Bobby Brapson got 20 years in prison for having one joint of marijuana. That's it. 20 years. It broke him. It broke him. He was a good guy. And it absolutely destroyed him having to spend all that time in prison over something as small, at least in my judgment, as a joint of marijuana was compared to the penalty that he got. And since I've been a lawyer, I have argued against many of these policies every chance I can get, before every forum that I could get in front of. They are wrong when they are used heavy-handedly. The impact that it makes on the community is significant, and that's exactly what's happened here.
In 1997, Young thought he could make a difference. So he used his influence to sway the community to vote for a new prosecutor. Her name, Joan Ziglar. After hearing her personal story of coming from nothing, he thought Ziegler would be able to understand and help young offenders.
I supported her lock, stock, and barrel, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to tell you why. I was in court one day over in the city, and I saw this young black woman stating her position before a judge that was pushing her around a little bit. He was making her earn her keep. Joan, as we know, came from a family of 15 children. Very poor surroundings when she grew up, and she was number one in her class at Ferrum College. She went to the law school at William and Mary, where I went for a brief period of time before I was in the Marines. And everything that I saw this woman do, I felt like my sort of prayers had been answered, that there was finally somebody that's been through it and can explain to other people that come from poverty and come from disadvantaged homes that there is a way out.
After she was elected, Young was shocked because he said she began to throw the book at first-time offenders.
Joan, in the 16 years she's been in office, she has dealt a very heavy hand, iron-fisted approach toward prosecuting people. Now, this is a public servant that's doing this. This is someone that's supposed to look out for the interest of all our citizens, both good and bad. Someone that's supposed to do justice in all these cases. I thought with Joan as Commonwealth Attorney, we've got a lock. We're finally going to get out of this morass of making these horrible, horrible sentences on people that are oftentimes sick, uneducated, all the words you want to come up with.
To prove his point, Young invited us to his office to meet one of his former clients, Tracy Walker. She went to prison for 5 years after being caught up in a sting. At first, she had hope in Ziegler, thinking that she would understand how hard it was to grow up in Martinsville.
But I feel like that, I feel that she's just really like I said, I just don't really think that she cared that much. I don't think that it matters to her about, her race or whatever, and as well as helping her race.
She was brave. She kept that smile on her face. She couldn't understand why she had been treated so harshly. And she was going, at that time, if I hadn't mentioned it, she was going to Rockingham Community College and had a way out of this whole thing. If the first time that they had come to her, they would say, okay, you've done something wrong. What we're going to do is charge you with distribution. You fulfill, jump through all these hoops, show us that you can do it. We'll reduce that to just simple possession. You can get off on a first offender program. They didn't, she lost, obviously, her college. She pulled her time.
Young told us point by point how he thinks Ziegler abuses the system.
They go back a second time, do the same thing. Each time it's 40 years in jail and a $500,000 fine. They go back a third. They go back a fourth. They go back a fifth. The last time, the 8th time that she sold some drugs to this undercover person who was benefiting, of course, from this whole thing by a lesser sentence and paying him the individual money for doing this, is the end result. As soon as he makes the buy, he signals the police, and there is another police officer 50 yards up the road. As she drives away, that car pulls out and stops her and charges her possession with the intent to distribute for the 9th charge. 9 charges times 40, she was looking at what, 360 years of prison. For those 9 charges, she was looking at millions of dollars worth of fines.
The way the system is set up, juries are forced to give more jail time.
They set every one of these cases against these young people with a jury, knowing that a jury can't suspend the sentences. Scare these young people and tell them that they're looking at 200-300 years in the penitentiary and millions of dollars worth of fines. And what do? They do what any unsophisticated person would do. They have to plead guilty to it. They can't risk getting a minimum as they would get in front of a jury with a number of offenses. I told the circuit judge that there were many people who thought that this was just tantamount to cruelty. That at some point in time on these low-level dealers, on these people that we know, the only thing we're going to do is spend a lot of taxpayer money and not help them by putting them in prison, that this has got to stop.
Walker, who's now out of jail, says that she believes that if Ziegler really cared, she would look closer at the cases.
I would go back. I would dig down and I would try to see where that person come from, what could have occurred with that person, and try to maybe conversate with that person, give that person a chance to see could they change, depending on the crime, depending on what they do, try to give that person a chance. Instead of just throwing them directly in jail, I would try to give them a different chance.
And if it were meaningful to Joan about rehabilitation or the possibility about giving these kids a chance before we start lowering the boom on them and putting them in prison and sending the police back down 5, 6, 7, 8, possibly 9 times as Tracy remembers, that is somebody, please, maybe somebody can call into your television station or your program or this program and tell us how that benefits society in the least. It doesn't. If it did, I would support it, but it doesn't. And that's why Joan has got to go, because she does not understand and has not been able to grasp the nature of what she is doing.
The Black community here is just like a growing up struggling. It's like a struggling thing with the Black community, and some of the people are not basically being raised in a good upcoming family. I feel like that a lot of that is occurring here, and I feel that a lot of the Black people are just, trying to survive, trying to do what they can do to survive and make it out here, because it is hard. And, some of them probably feel hopeless.
Both Young and Walker agree that Ziegler is a part of the problem.
It goes back to that biblical expression, just as the twig is bent, the tree is so inclined. We've got to rebend these twigs when they're young, not destroy them, not stomp a mud hole in them like's being done right now. We've got to find a way to give these kids a chance and to put them on the right direction before we spend $50,000 a year. I think that's what it costs to keep one person in jail. And the only thing we're doing is when we send a young lady like this to jail over what she's done in this, without giving her a chance, when we do that, all we've done is, for the majority of young people, is that we've snuffed that out. The black community has been decimated. The young people in our community think of those that have looked at multiple offenses involving drugs when it's low-level people that we're talking about, low-level, non-violent crime. For example, you get charged with selling one little pill of a Schedule I or Schedule II controlled drug substance, one or two of them, and you're looking at 5 years in the penitentiary minimum, 40 years maximum, and a $500,000 fine on top of that. So what do these prosecutors do to make it easy for themselves? What did David Grimes do in Pittsylvania County? What has Stephanie Vipperman done in Patrick County? And what has Joan, who has led the charge, done here in Henry County? They've adopted a view that in the event you do crime in our area, we're going to treat you as harshly as we can. And instead of going to someone that has committed one mistake, committed one crime, especially from this section of our communities where the people are so disadvantaged, and just throw everything that you've got in your arsenal at them, is not the way that this problem is ever going to be ameliorated. And we're never going to get rid of it as long as we beat these young people up and make them professional criminals before they ever get out of high school.